I kid you not. If I go back and I watch every single video, I probably have the same look on my face every time when it comes on. And I can't even imagine myself if there was a little red light on. So, anyway, thank you guys for coming back or coming for the first time or whatever. Let me make sure this is turned up all the way. Yep. The headline, it's a pretty big deal. It says that the decedent self-administered fentanyl. People may be aware that the Midwest Medical Examiners form states that here. Some people may not be. And then even some people may know that and then write it off as, yeah, well, maybe that's what they meant by Prince taking all the supposed medications with fentanyl-laced pills. However, we can dispute that notion that, and this is what I wanted to say. Because the fentanyl was self-administered and the plan that was supposed to go down was very much opposite of that, then you can imagine the conundrum that was caused and the cover-up and how really big the cover-up got. So this isn't about who killed Prince as much as why the cover-up got so big. So we'll discuss that as part of this as well. But again, for those that aren't aware, and it's a touchy subject for some, it's about, suicide. I've had family members commit suicide, my dear little sister, things like that. It's a subject that we have to talk about. But anyway, when someone dies, it's the coroner or the medical examiner's job to determine the cause and the manner of death. And I was researching on it, and a lot of times they say it's about 10 to 50% off because coroners have so very little information that in the general population they hesitate to mark death certificates and things as a suicide because they just don't have enough information because there's not enough investigation done. However, you would think in this case that no stone would be left unturned, as Jim Olsen said. So we're going to keep moving the stone since they don't know how. Okay? Anyway, so Midwest Medical Examiner's Office release of public data. It's Minnesota Statute 1383, Subdivision 2. Okay, and they have to list how the cause and the manner of death. Sorry, and here they put the place of death was the residence. They didn't put Paisley Park Studios. They put residence, as I've spoke about before. Date of injury unknown. Place of injury, residence. Address of injury, residence. Now, how injury occurred, that's where they list the decedent self-administered fentanyl. Now, at his residence, you have a lot of options when you're filling out a certificate. One of them is to not put anything under the injury section, but that, if you notice and you go back and watch the PBS thing or anything else that Mark Med said or Jim Olsen said, and that was that the body showed no signs of trauma. That's what they kept saying. And I quote, the body shows no signs of trauma. Well, the reason they kept saying that is because the manner of injury, how it occurred, the manner, which was the self-administering of the fentanyl. So you wouldn't say that somebody self-administered fentanyl if they just overdosed on a bunch of pills that the media would have you believe that Prince was taking for years. It wouldn't say that. It would say overdose of such and such medication or what have you. But it clearly says self-administered fentanyl. So that's first, okay? Now, pardon me, I dropped a paper. I always love being so professional in my videos. Now, that's where the cover-up starts, because you get there, oh my, and Prince is deceased in an elevator. Okay, now they don't know how or why at the time, probably, and so they do all the research. But what my point is here we read, Detective Nelson learned that the blood sample taken from Prince on 4/20 2016, was given to Dr. Quinn Strobel at the medical examiner's office. Sergeant Meyer contacted Dr. Strobel regarding the 4/20/16 blood sample. Dr. Strobel advised that she tested the blood sample taken from Prince on 4/20/2016 for fentanyl. The blood test, open up, guys, open your ears, on 4/20/2016, the blood test failed to show any fentanyl in Prince's blood on 4/20/2016. However, on 5/9/2016, upon arriving at the office, I spoke with Sergeant Meyer, who had been in contact with Dr. Quinn Strobel, blah, 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 and speaking with, learned that the results from the toxicology screening showed that Prince had oxycodone along with hydrocodone present in his urine. However, when they tested his blood, they discovered a high quantity of fentanyl in his blood. That was on 4/22. That they were talking about a report that was written on 5/9, but on 4/22, when they did the supposed autopsy, they did the 67.8 mcgs per liter of blood. Okay, that means that nobody was taking pills laced with fentanyl. That's what the mass media would have everybody believe, because how else are they going to cover it up? Okay, just keep that stuck in your head. You're not going to be taking. Listen, I've myself, as some of you may already know, I had the incident to overdose on heroin. I know at least 10 people personally who have died. Another handful of people who have tried to die or overdosed, or my whole family. It's in the lineage, and it's in a generation of peoples. And part of the plan I'm always talking about was to use ours truly as the biggest example for that. But the reason is to bring it to our attention, to understand what we've all been under, and that is like a hidden opioid crisis that was meant to take out generations of people. But that's aside the point. We can get back on track. So you cannot believe the media. You cannot. And if you do, you got issues. If you can open up a People magazine or turn on TMZ and believe that P was seen pacing outside of Walgreens anytime, because we're going to get more in depth on that too. But after these, if you still believe what you're reading in the media, you got issues, okay? But hopefully you don't, because I love to share this information and bring it out. Anyway, you guys, I wanted to talk about something. Not only, I talk about the plan all the time, you guys, because even though we all knew Prince Rogers Nelson to be a man, the cutest, sexiest little musician, man, soul, funkiest, he's way more than that, as I've discussed. And he told me the plan, and the plan was, because of the date in the gematria and the numerology type stuff, that date equals the 666, and there's lots of things behind it. And what he told me when I passed away was that they were going to be coming to kill him. And this is the very macabre stuff I don't like talking about, but as I mentioned before, that there would be plans to chop up his body and sell it for parts of a jigsaw puzzle. There's some really macabre things that I need to discuss with you guys. If you choose to stay tuned, I don't know if I'll do it today or not. It's about the Illuminati and the bloodlines and things like that, because it does come down from this vampire type sky people society, and it goes really deep, way deeper than anybody could possibly imagine. But right now, we're going to stay focused on this because my mind is starting to wander. And I also want to say, for the sake of anybody who might notice, I have a big pimple and I didn't wear any makeup today. And that's because during this soul search, this whole thing that I'm exposing to you guys, like I said, it's like, sitting here with no clothes on, it's like exposing my most inner self. And, I thought at first, if I, did myself up, because I like to look nice, but like, this is deep, and I don't always have time to do that. And if I'm going to really expose myself, then I'm just going to come as myself, because I would go to the grocery store or anywhere else like this. So I don't know. I think all women are very beautiful, no matter the skin color, no matter the weight, and as long as their soul is shiny. And anyway, so I just wanted to say that, because it's not super comfortable for me, but we're going to make it the new comfortable. How about that? Anyway, you guys, not only did they have a cover up to do, so they get there to have this disgusting plan. And why would the evil want to be so evil that they would want to do things like that? Because when you do your research into these bloodlines and these things, there's cannibalism, there's a lot of stuff. It's called sacrifice of Victor for a reason. And they had that planned, and because try to play him, you play yourself. Found a way to expose them by self-administering the fentanyl, is what my belief is. Now I want to cut to something else while I'm focused. There is much confusion, and even it didn't come to my attention until I think last night, about who arrived when. And I've discussed it, the arrival times, the texts between Schulenburg at Kirk at 8:15, the arrival of Hennepin County at 9:10 in the morning, all those things, all those discrepancies. But why that is because what I believe I'm hearing is that, and we'll base that on this next document, is that if the decedent were to have self-administered fentanyl, and hidden themselves in an elevator, because where is the last place that Prince Rogers Nelson was known to have gone? Everybody knows it. It's been public. You're not going to let the elevator bring you down. He called the elevator Satan. And so the whole premise, the whole media hype that he was found in the elevator, well, that may or may not be true, but the point that the media sold it that way is just the opposite of letting the elevator bring you down, right? So, but if he wanted to hide somewhere where he thought that nobody would look for him, possibly, well, then the elevator might be the place to do that. Now, I don't know if you can somehow lock the doors. And when I say elevator, that's in the file here that I'm going to share with you too. But remember that the back stairs, where Kirk sent that picture to Schulenburg of the back stairs, and then they turned that part of Paisley Park where they covered the doorway of the elevator. That elevator, it goes down to the garage elevator. Okay, so you got to remember that. And it doesn't go up any further because there's nowhere for it to go. So when we say elevator, it's a different kind of lift, I think. But anyway, distracting. If someone were to get in that elevator and say, hide in there so that they could take something and nobody would find them, that's where they might hide. That was my point. So what I wanted to get at was that the Chanhassen Fire Department, they were the first ones to respond. Jim Olsen stands there and talks on PBS about how it's real normal. He says it's real normal to have all these agencies respond. But it's not, because these other agencies that responded first were the Chanhassen Fire Department, Donald Johnson, as well as Mark Lifton, the fire marshal, Mark Lifton. Now, if this is how that reads, okay, I'm going to read it to you. On 4/27, I responded to the Chanhassen City Hall, where I met with Chanhassen Fire Chief Donald Johnson. I was advised Chief Johnson was the first EMS person on the scene of Paisley Park on Thursday. I'm going to skip the dates because we know we're talking about the 21st. I obtained a statement from the chief who stated they were dispatched to party down and not breathing. That would be consistent with somebody taking fentanyl. The chief said when he arrived with Fire Marshal Mark Lifton, okay, so as far as I know, and my brother-in-law is a fireman, I don't think it's normal for the fire marshal to go out with the chief. for a fire call, even if you are going to Paisley Park. So that's another reason that lets us know it was planned. They responded together. Anyway, when they responded, he observed a male party wearing a button-up black shirt, waving them down at the front door, yada, yada, yada. That's not relevant. Now, Chief Johnson said as he entered Paisley Park, he saw Kirk Johnson, who appeared to be grieving. Johnson told the chief. Now here, we don't know if we're talking about Kirk Johnson or if we're talking about Fire Donald Johnson. That's the way the files read, and they do that intentionally so that you'll be real confused. So Johnson told the chief, I think he might be dead, and showed the chief where Prince was located in the elevator. Chief Johnson said he observed the elevator door was closed, and Kirk Johnson was the one who opened the door. Chief Johnson said as soon as the elevator door opened up, he could tell it was Prince. As soon as the elevator door opened up, he could tell it was Prince. I already mentioned before, why was Kirk reopening the door for Detective Johnson if they found him after he was asking Marone and Andrew Kornfeld to wait in the conference room office? And then he went and came back and got Marone, looked all nervous, and then took off again. And then Kornfeld hears a scream and runs to the area. Well, yeah, anyway. Sorry, I get distracted. So anyway, it says Chief Johnson said as soon as the elevator door opened up, he could tell it was Prince. Chief Johnson said Prince was lying on his back, face up against the back of the elevator. I talked about that before. How are you on your back, face up against the back of the elevator? With his arms down to his sides. Chief Johnson said as he looked at Prince's skin color appeared normal. Now, this is what's important. Chief Johnson said it appeared there was a clear fluid coming out of Prince's mouth. Chief Johnson noted it was not vomit. It was not a foam cone, which is an indicator of an overdose, but something else, possibly saliva. Chief Johnson said that he did not want to attempt CPR in the elevator, and that's why he pulled him out. Now, again, let us remember that as the story goes, Kirk and Marone found him, or Kirk, but now we're hearing that the first EMS, Johnson with Lifton, got there, and then Kirk opened up the elevator doors again for showsies and tellsies. Pretty big cover-up if you ask me, right? Anyway, now, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I have some very condemning evidence on the liquid that would be found to be coming out of his mouth coming up, so stay tuned, please. Chief Johnson said that he noticed when he pulled Prince out of the elevator, Prince felt slightly rigid. Now, all these people are very seasoned, very educated, high-level deputies, sheriffs, EMS. They're first responders, for goodness sake, to Paisley Park for Prince Rogers Nelson. The body's stiff. They're pulling it out of the elevator, but he's only doing it because the body felt warm and he thought he might need to start CPR. But who on earth is going to think they need to do CPR on a rigid body? Okay? Even a child probably knows better than that. Another slap in the face to this cover-up. Anyway, so this is what's important because it's really telling. He said that Prince felt warm to the touch, and he did not know if it was the radiant heat in the elevator or if Prince just stopped breathing. So he advised he began CPR. Now, what radiant heat in the elevator? What radiant heat are we talking about? Are we talking about radiant heat from a small fire? Are we talking about radiant heat from the floor, radiant heat in the elevator? What are we talking about, the radiant heat? The reason I mention a fire is because maybe the reason that the fire chiefs were out there in the first place is because maybe if the decedent self-administered fentanyl, hopped in the elevator to hide and caused some other kind of distraction to foil the plan where the fire chiefs or what have you had to come out and they were there first. Well, maybe that's why they were there first. I don't know. These are just thoughts. Now, also, as I was looking through all the pictures online of the exterior of Paisley Park early in the morning that the investigators supposedly took, you do see where there's wet spots on the ground. And I know it was like misting later on when they did the media and the announcement that he had died. But earlier that day, I checked the weather and it said that it was 53 degrees and it didn't appear to be raining, though the parking lot was wet. So I wondered if there was some fire activity or something going on. Not to mention the fact that Chief Johnson in Hastings' report, Hastings or Hovarth or Brunick, I'm not sure which, noted that Chief Johnson took off to the basement with Hastings to make sure that there was the carbon monoxide levels were low. So carbon monoxide levels, why? Okay. Telling you came to the right channel. I'm doing this because I love, you guys know that by now. Anyway, now listen, this is what's hilarious too. And these where the lies get real thick, because this officer says Chief Johnson said the position Prince was in when we observed him was after they attempted CPR. It was not the position Chief Johnson found him. And admittedly, normally he would not have moved the body if he thought he was deceased. But Kirk said on the way in, I think he's dead. He said that Andrew Kornfeld, who he mentioned earlier, I didn't mention because it wasn't relevant, waved him in, said, I think he's dead. And they appeared to be grieving. He noticed he was stiff, though moist, and he announced he was going to give him CPR. But he normally wouldn't have moved the body if he thought he was deceased. So, I mean, I don't know where his brain was. Now, this is the other thing. Chief Johnson did not remember a rug, but believed it could have been in the elevator when he pulled Prince out. We ended the statement. That's what that says. So if Chief Johnson was the first responder, EMS responder, and not only did Kirk put on a little show and tell to open the elevator door up after he already found him, if you were going to drag out a body from an elevator to give life-saving CPR, you surely aren't going to do it on what was, one would assume a fairly expensive rug in Paisley Park. You're not going to drag little 5'2" body out on the rug. You're going to, and if you did drag it on the rug, well, quite possibly you wouldn't notice that the body was stiff, but they noticed that the body was stiff, which means that it wasn't on a rug, because Detective Hovarth talks about how the arm stayed in the same places as it was moved across the floor. So everybody wants to pretend that they just got to Paisley Park and ta-da, Prince Rogers Nelson was pronounced dead at 10:07, blah, blah, blah. Some pretty big discoveries, right? So anyway, moving forward, what I wanted to say was he said that Chief Johnson, the position that the sheriff that wrote this one, because you notice he said that the elevator door opened up and he noticed it once it was Prince and he was lying on his back, face up against the back of the elevator. He pulled him out, supposedly gave him life-saving CPR. And then this is how they said that they saw Prince, the person who just wrote this. So that means that Kirk and detectives or fire people Johnson would have moved him again. I observed Prince was wearing a solid black Rasta-style hat over his head, a black Under Armour-style sweatshirt, which appeared to be cut. I later learned EMS cut Prince's sweatshirt while conducting CPR, but they didn't do that because there was no CPR. It was just announced. A gray t-shirt under the black sweatshirt, black lounge athletic-style pants, and black ankle socks. There was a black NTN-colored decorative rug under Prince's body. So though Fire Chief Johnson didn't remember a rug, now there was a rug. There's always a rug in the movies. They roll the people up in the rug. It's pretty standard. Now, under closer examination, I observed purpling under the left side of Prince's face, which appeared to be lividity setting in. I observed monitor-style pads on the inside of Prince's calves, above the ankles, and on the inside of Prince's left wrist, which I was told came from a heart monitor EMS applied during life-saving measures. I know I did that kind of fast. That's why I go back and sum up. So dig. When Andrew Kornfeld supposedly is being interviewed, he says that when he saw Prince, when he ran in after Kirk came back and got Marone, and Kirk was looking all nervous, and then he got Marone, and then they went in. And then when he heard a scream, he ran into the place where they were. That's what his script says. Well, he says that it looked like that Prince had just laid down on his left side and went to sleep. That's what Kornfeld's testimony says. So when we read here that upon closer examination, I observed purpling around the left side of Prince's face, which would be lividity. That's just where the blood would be pooling on that side of your face. Takes about 3 to 6 hours, I think, something like that. Consistent with the rigor mortis as well. Now, monitor style pads, you guys, let's talk about those. I said this before in another video, but in case you missed it, if someone were going to have a life-saving AED defibrillator machine applied to them, you get 2 pads, one by your heart, one on your chest. You do not get them placed on the inside of your calves. I observed monitor-style pads on the inside of Prince's calves above the ankles and on the inside of Prince's left wrist, which I was told came from the EMS. Now, during Hovar's and Hastings' testimony, you understand that they never applied the leads because Ridgeview paramedics supposedly they walked in and said, hey, there's rigor mortis there. You can stop those pretend life-saving techniques. So that's how that all went down when you read all the files. No CPR, no life-saving techniques, no nothing. That's my point. Because they already knew he was quite gone. And then they go on to talk about the injection site with the forearm and the pictures and the bruising. Now, and then they talk about the blue-colored bandage, etc. So that is how. So now we've already got Prince in 3 different positions. When Kirk found him, when Johnson found him, and when, I'm not sure what officer this is 100%, but when so-and-so found him. So 3 different positions. And that third position, they said was only after they tried to give life-saving services. Now dig this, you guys. This is super. Now, file number ICR 160125559. Again, I don't know who wrote it. My apologies. Line 43. It says, I received records that showed Prince's medical emergency. It says. I received records that showed Prince's medical emergency on 4/21/16. The paramedics checked a box on their form that showed Prince, please listen, had vomit in his airway and his eyes were closed. You don't get life-saving CPR and still have vomit in your throat, okay? You just don't. Nowadays, they have those little plastic things that they whip out and put on your mouth anyway to do the mouth-to-mouth and clearing the airway. It's the ABCs of life-saving CPR, airway, breathing, circulation. So if you're going to do CPR, well, clearly he's not going to have vomit in his throat. Anyway, the paramedics checked a box on their form that showed he had vomit in his airway and his eyes were closed. In the narrative history on the paramedics record, it reads, patient was taken yesterday by family to clinic doctor for nervous and anxious. Patient given meds to relax and per family, what family? What family took Prince to the doctor? Per family? The family. Yeah, Scarface family. Per the family, patient stated it's not enough. Patient last seen at his home last night and found today supine, not breathing. Fire arrived and pulled patient out of elevator. Now, that doesn't say anything about Kirk finding him. It doesn't say anything about Marone. You see, it says fire arrived and pulled patient out of elevator and started CPR, which is a complete lie because, again, with the vomit in the throat and everything else. And it's a complete lie that Kirk found him first if fire arrived and pulled him out of the elevator. Did he rescue him out of the elevator, pull him out of the elevator, or did he bring him out of the elevator to do CPR? Because this said he pulled patient out of the elevator. Anyway, upon our arrival, CPR in progress, clearly a lie because it never was. Patient limbs are stiff, arms bent, and unable to straighten. CPR stopped due to rigor mortis. Patient has vomit in mouth. Tell me which one of them champion Carver County officers or Chanhassen officers or any of them actors or crisis actors milling in and out and about the place did CPR and got vomit in their mouth. None of them. This is the real deal. They don't tell you this in People magazine. Aren't you glad you came? Leads applied and Assaddle stole the flat line. I don't know how to say that word. Confirmed. So they said that the leads were applied and that the flat line was confirmed, but they didn't, because they didn't apply the leads. And it's in the other reports too, when you read it all, put all the pieces together. So med control contacted in time of death confirmed at 10:07. So just because they announced and confirmed the time of death at 10:07, that's what the media announces was like, hey, Prince died at 10:07. But that's just the announcement of the time of death, though, when the body is straight up rigor, and that takes 3 to 6 hours, and the body is warm, and the not only is there rigor with a bit of stiffness, when they say that the arms are stiff, arms bent and unable to straighten, one of the more macabre things that I mentioned is that when you manipulate a dead, deceased body, the body becomes even more stiff and not malleable. So it would be clear and obvious that when these officers saw him moving across the floor, because if you look at him, it's like, yeah. Anyway, also, you guys, this is also really important on the medical tip. This officer goes on to say, oh, pardon me, let me back up. He says, it actually says in here the time of death was confirmed at 10:07, and then it says clear scene. It doesn't say I cleared the scene. It just says clear scene, like you're reading a script. It's a trip. I wish you could see it. Where is it? Clear scene. Clear scene. Scene. Click. I continued to read the record from 421 and learned that no AED was used and the death was unwitnessed. So even though they just said that they did that they used the AED, this guy goes on to no AED was used and the death was unwitnessed. So meaning that the decedent self-administered the fentanyl. Now, before I go on to how I believe the fentanyl was consumed in this bottle of liquid that was found, this officer goes on to talk about the medical record for Prince from 10/23/13, and this is super relevant because this is how it reads, and then I'll discuss it. I then found a medical record for Prince from 10/23/13. The record shows Prince was admitted into the emergency department in 1958, 10/23/13. That's what's relevant, and admitted, transported by ambulance. In this report, Prince complains about vomiting and dehydration. Prince was assisted to the ambulance on a gurney and transported to the emergency room. This was 10/23/13. Assisted by ambulance on the gurney and transported to the emergency room. While at the hospital, the doctor treating Prince wrote in her report the following: for you doctors or medical buffs out there, patient very symptomatic with orthostatic vital signs and has elevated WBC white blood count with left shift. Bicarb is only 19, suggesting he has not been eating for some time, and potassium slightly low at 3.4 pi. Anyway, declined the Zofran offered as he would prefer to be as natural as possible. Liter of normal saline given, and will give liter of D5 half normal with 20 milligrams of potassium. Instructed patient he will need to keep at least some water down, so we'll try a PO challenge when ready. Prince was discharged from the hospital 2302 on 10/23/13. Now, what's interesting about that, you guys, is I don't have that piece right now, but one of the officers says that as they were reading the files, that they couldn't find anything else on Prince Rogers' medical file. The thing that's relevant on this 10/23 thing this right here is the ICR numbers and the phone calls for the 911 calls that had previously been coming into Paisley Park. There's information available. It goes from 2011 to 2016. One of the officers states that there has been no calls or medical calls or emergency calls or something out to Paisley Park involving Prince Rogers Nelson the whole time that they had to like deal with them. But when reading this file that this officer found, the report on 1023, when going through the 911 phone calls, you can see on 1023 where, I'll show you. Let me get it up there. Can you see it? It's all highlighted. Now, what that says is on 1023, in this, a 53-year-old male would be consistent with the age at the time. At 7:06, an ambulance rig from Chaska, took a male to the hospital for being dehydrated, and that's what it says. Adult male to 212 Medical Center by Ridgeview. That's what it says. 212 Medical Center by Ridgeview. So if they have Prince walking into a medical center, who's to say when that video came from, or if it came from that at all? I know it said that he was on a gurney in an ambulance that time, but they also don't tell you these things. So anything could be made up in the videos and everything that they're talking about. That's my point. Now, also, I lost my train of thought. I want somebody to get back with me and tell me. I tried to look up this stuff about the very symptomatic with orthostatic vital signs and that he wouldn't eat or drink. Now, the reason that that's relevant is because as you go through the emails and different things, you come to find out that there was an email in which Prince was supposedly sending to Ray Roberts about probiotic water, about how he wanted to keep up with some new brand of probiotic water that didn't affect the thyroid as much. I don't have that piece available, but that's from memory. And then the other part is that Ray Roberts said, when they asked Ray Roberts, who was supposedly the chef, if Prince had any significant weight loss or gain, Roberts stated that he had noticed over the last month that Prince had been losing weight. He stated he felt like Prince was eating less and wasn't drinking any water. So, Roberts stated Bakir and Roberts were trying to keep Prince healthy. I asked Roberts what Prince's response was. Roberts stated he never spoke directly to Prince. Roberts stated he would try to make more eating and drinking options available. So then they go on to say that Prince had sent that email about the new kind of probiotic water. And here's where I believe the water bottle relates to the fentanyl bottle of water. This says, on 5/10/2016, yada yada, prior to searching, yada yada. During the search warrant, Ben Gramitz and I searched rooms together. The first room we searched was a conference room on the top floor. The room was labeled as room 1, which would have been the conference room where Barone and Kurt and supposedly Andrew were waiting. An Aqua Hydrate pH 9 blue transparent bottle that was half full of a clear liquid was located on the bottom shelf on the middle cabinet in the room. So here we have a hidden bottle of clear liquid on the bottom shelf in the middle cabinet in room 1. And then it goes on to say they collected the bottle and brought it to investigative assistant Nikki Schmidt to be logged into evidence. The curious thing here is I've ripped this file apart and I haven't seen anything from Nikki Schmidt, so I don't know who she is or where that bottle went. Also interesting, on the 2 spoons that were found in the freezer, they don't really say anything about those either, but they're there for a reason. Anyway, so that bottle is what I believe was the bottle that perhaps could have had the liquid in it. And what's interesting to note is that As I mentioned before, Ray Roberts admitted that he had a Suboxone prescription as a recovering addict. So if he had a Suboxone prescription for patches or under the tongue film ones that dissolve, and they mentioned it during the file, that those things can be soaked in water, to get the fentanyl, like squeeze them out. How would somebody come into 67.8 a water bottle's worth full of fentanyl? Well, that's what they can't figure out. That's what the whole what happened is about, is where the fentanyl came from. And even when Detective Murphy, I believe, is talking to Kornfeld, he says, well, what we're really concerned about is, if I could get it out and say it verbatim, but the detective says, what we're really concerned about is that if someone were to have interfered with the blah, blah, blah. So basically, he was inferring that Andrew may have tried to interfere by giving Prince the fentanyl or something like that. So that's what the whole cover up is about, you guys. It's not about where the pills came from, because they're really, whether there was or wasn't is not relevant, because Dr. Schulenberg prescribed them. Kirk was doctor shopping for them. Dr. Bruce prescribed them. Howard Kornfeld was brought in to, I think, do some kind of witnessed programmed Suboxone reanimation, I don't know, outside of my realm of thinking type BS, and it didn't work. And I know that sounds trippy and deep, but you just wait, because we're also going to go back to videos, or to discussions about what they did in Moline, and how they had an after party planned, and how Kim Pratt asked Kirk if she should wait for the second plane, and how Theo London actually said that he didn't attend the after party in Atlanta, but he planned it, but Prince didn't go. Lots of other things to talk about, but here we are on the body and the fentanyl and the self-administering of the fentanyl. So I also just want to say, on a side note, you guys, some other mysteries they don't talk about in the media, and that is and these are, they say they can't figure anything out. Well, this one says on 10/5/17, it received information from anonymous party stating Kirk had contacted Kim Berry, the hairdresser, we all know, the day that Prince was found deceased, and told Kim that he, Kirk Johnson, had to clean and move Prince's body prior to contacting law enforcement. And that was the reason why Prince's clothing was noted on being on backwards during the autopsy. Their words, not mine. So there's that. Sheila E. told me that she had traveled to Paisley Park the day of Prince's death and had spoken with Kirk Johnson. The sheriff's office was still on the scene when Sheila E. arrived. Sheila said that she had heard from someone she could not recall who told her that Prince was found in his bedroom, and that Kirk had dressed Prince and moved him into the elevator. Sheila said that when she asked Kirk if that was true, Kirk laughed and told Sheila no, it was not true. Now, this, I was going to stay focused on the body. I don't like talking about it. I don't even know whose body it was, or, whatever is what. But anyway, now, this is how weird this stuff reads, you guys. When the warrant was signed, I saw the Hennepin Crime Lab process the area and the body of Prince. This is the body of Prince. Why would you say the body of? I asked that swabs of Prince's hands and neck be taken to allow the family to have contact with Prince. I told Dr. Strobel that we would be ready for the transport van to come and take Prince away. Now listen, this is important. It's about the elevator. The interior of the elevator was constructed of mostly silver metal, possibly stainless steel. I saw on the southeast wall of the elevator, under the handrail, that there was a fluid splashed on the wall. I made a mental note to have this area photographed and a swab taken of the substance on the wall. Now, Mind you, this officer just explained the elevator as being a mostly silver, possibly stainless steel metal, like a up and down delivery type elevator that would be in the residence. The elevator that's online, if you look at it where the rug is and the potpourri bowl is on there, it's all like, I don't know, wrong color, like pink salmon. I can't really tell you what color that is. I've never been to Paisley Park, but it's not all stainless steel. So again, I pointed out many times 2 different elevators, 2 different scenarios, and they clearly said there was fluid splashed on the elevator, which would coincide with fluid coming out of his mouth, and that. Now, this is the part it makes me mad. I spoke to the family and explained that they would be allowed very soon to be with Prince. When I was finished, I received a blanket from Lieutenant Kittleson, and I covered all but the left hand of Prince at the sister's request. Which is interesting because, and it just dawned on me that the other people, the other brothers and sisters and all that, were not called to the scene by the time the coroner and the ME would have got there to take the body away. And when you read the files, you notice that Detective Hastings was sent with, I believe, Nucci, if I'm not mistaken, to go and notify Tyka, but then they're called en route that Tyka was already notified and to come back to the scene. And then when they get there, Tyka's already there, ta-da, with purple balloons and crazy-ass purple hair and that face. Anyway, plan. So when they say that I spoke to the family and explained that they would be allowed to be with Prince and covered him up, blah, blah, blah. The family went to the body of Prince. The body of Prince went to view the body. Like, why do they say the body of Prince? It's insane. And eventually several asked to see his face. I uncovered the face after some had the chance to turn away. When the family was done, I escorted them back outside. I helped the ME load Prince inside the body bag and watched the seal put on the zipper. I assisted in carrying the body bag containing Prince. 4 of us carried him into the elevator and to the basement garage, the one that we were talking about earlier. I lifted the bag onto a stretcher and saw him secured into place. There had been a second transport van that had left the building as a decoy prior to us bringing Prince to the garage. Kat from Emmy's office accompanied Prince in the transport van to their office. Kat, we need you to rap. Kat, we need you to ride in transport van with Prince's body. Okay. Yeah, you get where I'm going, right? That's how ridiculous all this stuff gets, you guys. Try to make it fun. Now, on 4/22 at approximately 8:50, Nucci and I arrived at the Mr. and Ramsey, the ME's office. Started the autopsy and noted that Prince was wearing his clothes backwards. Now, it doesn't take a genius to know that the pictures that we see online, when you look up Prince dead body investigation, this, that, the elevator, all the crap they're willing to show you, he doesn't have his clothes on backwards. And all the people, Hastings, Hovarth, Brunig, Olson, everybody who Olson said, oh, he had on some clothes. Anyway, they all described him as having on black pants, athletic jacket, either torn or cut, etc., but not one of them said Prince's clothes were on backwards. Not one. Now, when he got to the Emmy's office for the autopsy, his clothes was on backwards. Why was that? Is it because they had playtime in between? Is it because they did things with the deceased body? Like making photo books that Marone was selling and even found with some in her purse with, like, I don't know, $100,000 in cash or something? I don't know, some ridiculous amount. They made photo books, you guys. They posed his body. They put the arms on the guitar. All the pictures that are out there today, I talk about it all the time. And that's as much as I'm going to say about it. When you look closely and you use your God-given Tech 9, you can see what's being done. They played with it because they knew they could make money. And that's why the body was so rigged, is because it had been trying to manipulate and take all these pictures, because it's all about the money. It's all about selling the pictures. So they were changing his clothes, putting all the outfits on him, wanting to be him, probably, I don't know, doing what with it, because they're very, very evil people, you guys. They're very evil. You have to know how the evil goes. I might do a short video after this just to talk about the Illuminati and the things that I believe that the Creator is telling me, the things that he was put through in the programming that's done to all kinds of people, but that's not for this video. So anyway, it said that Dr. Strobel said that his pants and shirt were on backwards. Prince was wearing a long sleeve black shirt and a gray shirt with the sleeves cut off under. So before, with the descriptions of the officers, he wasn't wearing a gray shirt with the sleeves cut off under, and so they could slide the clothes on. And then also, we know that it says Dr. Strobel said Prince was wearing boxer briefs, but were on the correct way. A black stocking hat was also removed from Prince's head. Now, we know that the other officer said it was a black Rasta style hat, which is like the more beanie, the draggy beanie, which is in the pictures. But here, it's a stocking hat, which you would put on under a wig to change hair wigs and make his hair look and change different. So, and then they asked if they wanted to collect it. This is what it says. A black stocking hat was also removed. Dr. Strobel asked if Sheriff's Office wanted Prince clothes as evidence, and I advised we did. The clothing was gathered and placed into evidence bags by Dr. Strobel and sealed. Separate bags. And she also mentioned that she didn't see any trauma to the body of Prince, which means that they just took real good care of it while they were posing and didn't bang it around and bruise it or whatever else. I'm not sure, but I guess stiff rigor mortis doesn't count as trauma. Maybe that has something to do with them not calling it a suicide. I don't know. Now, another thing on the fentanyl in the elevator, you guys, this officer, ICR number 160125559, goes on to say, during the brief, it was explained that there was reason to believe that Prince Rogers Nelson may have been using fentanyl. Now, they knew, it was about 5:10 when they found out that, on 4/20, there was no fentanyl whatsoever. And on 4/21 or 4/22, the morning of the autopsy, there was a 67.8. So when the officers say that there was reason to believe that Prince Rogers Nelson may have been using fentanyl, then they go on to talk about how it's found in the transdermal patch. You can soak the patch in a liquid solution such as water, juice, and other liquids in order to have its properties transfer from the medication gel contained within the patch into the solution. Ingest, snort, or have fentanyl solution administered via suppository. Now, fentanyl can also be found as a pill, powder, or injection. It's interesting that not only do we have the bottle of liquid that was found on the shelf, Ray Roberts bringing the liquid. I think in a way, as odd as it sounds, I don't know, because I don't get the whole deal of it yet, that somebody might have been trying to help him as part of the plan. Not to mention the super fan pharmacist from New York that called 28 times around midnight, the night of the 20th to the 21st, that I discussed on another video. Couldn't have been he had anything to do with anything. I don't know. He probably had access to fentanyl, though. Now, I'm not knocking the people that provided the fentanyl, because if somebody did interfere and give Prince the fentanyl, they're helping him because they knew what was coming, because that means that he actually shared something with somebody, or maybe he got it all by himself. I don't know. I don't get to know the answers to everything, just like you guys. I have to find them or get told them, but looking for the truth is like that. I'll never stop, but that's why I'm here to share it with you guys, because it's so very important to realize that the announcements, you guys, you remember when Prince went on what's her name? The blonde lady, the comedian that did the show. She would always come out and dance. I can't remember her name, but she had him on one time, and they laughed about how she bought him a pair of boxers. And shook his head like he ain't gonna wear no boxers. So I think it's interesting that his body had boxers on too. Little tidbits that only a person that's been listening intently for 37 years is going to know. Now, this video is almost an hour. I want to read you guys something. Welcome to the dawn. When the things you know are far from what they seem, when the past becomes the future and time becomes a dream, when the light of God is the only thing in life that will redeem, when the voice you hear commands you to entertain the absurd, and when you do, it unlocks the apocalypse of that you have heard. When the day that lies before you seems the darkest, in a word, welcome to the dawn. Every piece a puzzle, every name a clue, every choice you make is karma, so be careful what you do. Welcome to the dawn. Those are the lyrics to that, and it's paraphrased. Welcome to the dawn. You guys, it's not fair. The media lie. I have a lot more to tell you, a lot more to go, but I don't want anybody leaving these videos thinking, yeah, so what, another singer down the drain by drugs, who cares? It's a mass media lie, but this isn't just any old singer. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back. Okay. Maybe next time I can talk about a little happier things, and I'll share a little more personal stories because I got a lot to share. Okay. Thank you.